I've been thinking something over the last couple of weeks about Jose Mourinho from his demeanour, his comments and his actions. And Rio Ferdinand voiced it on BT Sport before the Valencia game last night. He questioned whether Jose Mourinho is trying or wants to be sacked. When asked by Gary Lineker whether or not Rio feels that Mourinho is trying to get sacked, this is what he had to say. He said, "That's what it seems like to me. Some of his actions, some of the things that he says. You lose the game 3-1 against West Ham, and it's evident to everybody in that stadium or anyone around the world that watched the game that the attitude of the players and the intensity that was played was wrong, it was off." He came out and actually said it wasn't a problem for me. I don't know what game he was watching. And he started talking about the network of scouts for the other team, picking fights with players that is so off-key and out of sorts. And you think, you must be searching for the sack the way you're talking. Now, what I want to do is analyse what Rio Ferdinand had to say, pick apart what he is saying, and effectively why I might actually agree with Rio in that Mourinho might be angling for the sack. Now, if you look at Ferdinand's point about Mourinho picking fights with players, it's always been the Mourinho way. He's always worked on dividing players, certain players, and divide and conquer. That's been Mourinho's style. But it was Mourinho's comments in an interview before the game kicked off against Valencia, in an interview with BT Sport, that I found utterly baffling.
I'm in football for more than 2 decades, and I never believed, maybe I am naive, but I never believed in divided dressing rooms. I never believed in a player that goes to the pitch and doesn't want to win.
Who is Jose Mourinho kidding? We saw what happened at Chelsea, Jose. We saw what happened with Eden Hazard and all the other players effectively downing tools until you got sacked, and then all of a sudden they could play football again. We saw what happened at Real Madrid with Ramos, with Casillas. We saw what happened the first time at Chelsea as well. We saw what happened every place you've ever managed. I don't know why Jose Mourinho is trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and suggest that he's so naive that he doesn't believe a player will ever not play for the manager. And Scholes and Ferdinand said it before the game. They've got experience. Rio was there with David Moyes. Rio was, as far as I'm concerned, one of the players that did down tools under David Moyes. He's seen a divided dressing room and he can see the same hallmarks on this United team, and so can every single United fan. So for Mourinho to say he's naive and doesn't believe in a divided dressing room, when that's what he's dealt with, that's what he's created throughout his entire career, is a baffling thing to say. It's almost like he's willing and trying to create an environment where dissent happens so it can be used as an excuse, almost like dropping a grenade and just pretending that you didn't pull the pin in the first place. It's just weird. I know it's Jose Mourinho's style in that he rarely accepts blame or puts responsibility on himself. But what we're seeing here, we've seen before. And for Mourinho to effectively say it's not happening, it's not. Players don't ever not play for the manager. It's bullshit. And we're seeing it at United. Now, as for the odd decisions, you've only got to look at Scott McTominay. I'm not picking on Scott for himself. I'm picking on Scott McTominay because he was used by Jose Mourinho in such a ridiculous decision to start at centre-back against West Ham, when Eric Bailly, Man United's best centre-back on paper at the club, as far as I'm concerned, either that or Chris Smalling, which is great, Scott should not have played in that game. Not as a centre-back anyway. If you're going to play him anyway, play him as central midfielder, which is his actual fucking position. But instead, Jose Mourinho played him at centre-back. And lo and behold, Man United was shit. Man United conceded 3 goals. Scott McTominay was caught out of position plenty of times and was culpable for problems which led to United conceding more than 1 goal. And that in itself is a baffling decision, the fact that McTominay played centre-back. What makes it more baffling is the fact that Bailly was on the bench, and it was an unnecessary, it wasn't even a risk. It was just a pointless decision. And what makes it even more baffling is the fact that Mourinho tried it before. Ander Herrera against Tottenham Hotspur, playing as a centre-back in a back 3. We were shit. Herrera was out of position plenty. Man United conceded 3 goals. The same thing had already happened previously, but Jose Mourinho did it again. Now, Mourinho is a strong tactical manager. You don't win the Champions League. You don't win the league in England, in Italy, in Portugal, in Spain by being a shit manager. So for him to have done such a baffling decision when it was just so unnecessary and it didn't work previously, What the fuck are you doing? Is this Jose Mourinho's message to the Manchester United board and to Ed Woodward saying, look, you didn't want me to sign a centre-back in the summer, so I'm going to play midfielders there all the time. We're going to keep conceding goals, but that's your fault. Is he trying to create excuses for himself, which he can then use after, as far as I'm concerned, he inevitably does get sacked? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then as for Jose Mourinho's comments, I mean, he's made plenty of baffling comments over his time as United manager. Lots I've agreed with, lots I've disagreed with, but that's his style of management. He's a very vocal manager, and he's in the press a hell of a lot because of his comments. But you look at his comments after West Ham, where he singled out Scott McTominay for... Again, I'm talking about McTominay, but this is just the focus of the problem at the moment. It's a perfect example of it. He praised McTominay for his performance against West Ham when McTominay was distinctly average, as was every other United player. But he said that his special praise on McTominay singled him out. The player that Mourinho made his manager's player of the year last year. Again, mad decision. But it's ignoring the elephant in the room. It's not pointing out how shit United were against West Ham, because we were woeful, and it's ignoring the elephant in the room. And it makes Mourinho look delusional for the fact that he can't come out and say, look, that was a shit performance against West Ham. There was no effort or desire from the players. There was nothing going forward. We deserved to lose. Instead, he praises Scott McTominay and says that there needs to be more United players like Scott McTominay in the squad. Are you trying to turn United fans on you, Jose? That's what it sounds like there. And then after the Valencia game, a few more strange comments come out, and Jose said it would be really good if United beat Newcastle. Obviously, United play Newcastle this weekend, but for United fans, that comment harks back to a horrible, horrible time under David Moyes when he said when Newcastle were coming to Old Trafford that United were going to make it hard for them to beat us. And it was at that point where United fans were like, see you later, David. You're never going to be United manager. And for Mourinho to come out and say that at this time, again, it doesn't help himself. And I don't think any of this helps himself. Unless helping himself would be towards getting the sack. Now, why would Jose Mourinho want to be sacked, though? It would give Jose an alibi. You know, he could say, look, Ed Woodward and the club didn't back me in the summer, didn't get me the centre-back that I really needed, and we did need one. You know, it gives him excuses. He won 2 trophies in his first season. Why isn't that followed through? Is that because of the transfer window again? But financially, it will be a huge payout for Jose Mourinho if he was to get the sack. He's just signed his new contract in January. And look at how he's coming and talking now. It's just, I'm seeing such different Jose Mourinhos. The one before the contract was signed and the one that's after the contract is signed. I don't know what to think anymore, but Rio Ferdinand, for me, raised a point that I had been thinking about in my head for a little bit. And I want to know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that Jose Mourinho is actively trying to get sacked? Is he creating the circumstances and the context where a sacking is going to happen and giving himself excuses and alibis and a financial payout if it were to happen? Or do you think this is utter madness? Right now, the club is utter madness. United are a fucking shambles. Antonio Valencia liking posts on Instagram, calling for Mourinho to be sacked, only to then apologise the next day. The Greater Manchester Police after the Valencia game saying that we didn't refuse to give United a police escort because we were late to our home game. Valencia got to Old Trafford before United did, and it's our home stadium. Everything about the club stinks right now. But I want to know from you about this particular question. Do you think that Mourinho is trying to get sacked as Manchester United manager, or do you think that is a ludicrous thing to suggest? As always, if you're new to the channel, subscribe to United People's TV. Take it easy.